Welcome to this course. We're going to start with the review of some concepts and the preview of some concepts that will stay with us throughout this course and clarify some of the basic terms. Don't worry if this is going a bit fast. We'll have time throughout the course to get deeper and explore this more. Let me start with something that at the taping of this course became a relatively big deal, as 200 American CEOs came together in the Business Roundtable and suggested that they need to revise the statement on the purpose of a corporation. The first sentence reads, "Americans deserve an economy that allows each person to succeed through hard work and creativity and to lead a life of meaning and dignity." The second sentence is, "We believe the free market system is the best means of generating good jobs, a strong and sustainable economy, innovation, a healthy environment, and economic opportunity for all." Why do you think those 200 CEOs are coming together to come up with a new statement on the purpose of a corporation? I think this is a central anchor point for us in this course to see how global managers are facing challenges that are universal, that they all don't know yet how to deal with. One thing is clear. The current situation is fraught with manifold challenges, such as climate change, pollution, poverty, inequality, the emergence of artificial intelligence, corruption, popular upheaval, mistrust towards banks and other corporations. And most organizations and their leaders, such as these global CEOs, aren't really clear that their organizations are fit to address these challenges. They're not even clear whether these organizations that they are leading are fit for humans. At least the emergence of these comic relief forms of Dilbert and The Office speak volumes about how people feel at work. Not so great. We need a deep set of a change of mindsets, I argue, in this course, and this will help these global CEOs to reach their goals. But one thing needs to be understood, that problems cannot be solved with the same mindset that created them. And the current problems require a new perspective, a different perspective. You can't continue business as usual and expect a different result. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So we need to dig deep and try to understand how we need to rethink and shift our mindset to be able to solve these problems. And one of the marks of a truly dominant intellectual paradigm is the difficulty people have even sort of thinking outside of that box, imagining an alternative view. I take some very simple metaphors to highlight where we are in terms of our mindset in management, in business, and where we can go. Much in alignment with those 200 CEOs that put out the statement on the purpose of a corporation. There's the economistic model that resembles the triangular sandwich, where managers, business leaders are responsible for maximization of market share, of profitability, shareholder value. Then there is the alternative model, which is pretty much in line with what the Business Roundtable is suggesting, is that there is a responsibility to operate in a safe and just zone where all human beings can thrive, where there is a respect for the dignity of all stakeholders, that's at the core, and where there's a respect for the planetary boundaries. We're not living on an infinite planet. This becomes clear. Growth is not, or growth possibilities are not unlimited. In this course, and in prior courses, you probably heard these two different background narratives that drive management. The dominant one is the economistic story that's intellectually rooted. It's not just something that we come up with, it is something that has a long 200-year intellectual tradition. And then there's the alternative humanistic story that's centered on Homo sapiens, that may be even older. And that, I think, is also the possibility for a new perspective on how we organize. The dominant mindset, this economistic story, in very short and pointed terms, is the story of a psychopath, a Bernie Madoff, a person that is a good trickster, a quote-unquote monster, a person that we typically want to see in prison rather than in positions of responsibility. Now, I understand this is extreme, and I'm making an extreme point to make it clear that this is not necessarily the best way to think about who should be in charge, how we should organize. Yet we do have a long tradition that's also been awarded a lot of Nobel Prizes in economics that would suggest that, yes, let's see how we can organize better towards profit maximization by command and control, by top-down governance, and where people are basically just means to an end, because ultimately we will all be better off if every economy works to maximize its own gross domestic product, or every company to maximize its own shareholder value. This story has been variously assailed and is also the story of the organization, the corporation, as a psychopath. If we go back to the statement of the purpose of a corporation that these CEOs were signing, it is countering that narrative. These CEOs, are saying, no, we're not leading psychopathic organizations. We want to be responsible. And that is basically a reaction towards the need for a new story, a better story, how people are motivated. That we want more than just profit, and we expect more from organizations than psychopathic behavior, uncaring behavior, because we want to be able to survive. Now, what we know from evolutionary insights, our species has survived for specific reasons. And it's not because we maximized anything, but because we were able to balance. And we're going to go into this more throughout the course, and you might have heard me speak about this before in another course. But just to give you a short overview, the argument of evolutionary sciences is that our predecessors, Homo habilis and Australopithecus, they developed two drives, much like any kind of animal. To be able to survive, they needed to acquire what they needed to survive, and they needed to be able to defend it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive. Very simple and intuitive. So Paul Lawrence says that we have these two independent drives, the drive to acquire, DA, and the drive to defend, DD. This prior species didn't survive because of environmental changes, etc. We couldn't. And a new species, Homo erectus, was able to do so. And they developed a different type of additional drive that Paul Lawrence calls the drive to bond. And that means we developed a social nature where we were not by ourselves, but we were tribal. And this made a lot of sense because in the new environments, we were only able to survive when we divided labor, tasks, when we could hunt together, when we could protect ourselves and each other. Homo erectus, as you probably know, did not survive either, but Homo sapiens, the species that we are officially part of, developed an even bigger brain, and that allowed us to think abstractly, and it developed a drive to comprehend as an independent kind of drive that we need to satisfy. None of these drives, according to Paul Lawrence, can be maximized. If we do maximize, then we're not able to survive. But the objective in this perspective is that we are able to balance them. Currently, the argument would be we're out of balance. We are focusing too much on the drive to acquire at the expense of the drive to bond and the drive to comprehend and the drive to defend. If this doesn't yet resonate completely, don't worry, we'll get into this throughout the course. The interesting thing is, for me as a professor, but maybe for you as well, that these kind of insights from evolutionary and the natural sciences overlap completely with the insights from philosophy and theology over time, the ancient traditional wisdoms. One of the key pieces here, and if you recall, one of the key pieces in the statement on the purpose of cooperation by the 200 CEOs is the notion of dignity. Dignity apparently seems to be critical. Now, dignity in the economistic narrative did not exist. What Michael Jensen, one of the leading proponents of this economistic perspective on organizing, suggested is that we all have a price. Like it or not, individuals are willing to sacrifice a little of almost anything we care to name, even reputation or morality, for a sufficiently large quantity of other desired things. And these things do not have to be money or even materials. The humanistic perspective follows an adage by Kant who says everything has either a price or a dignity. Whatever has a price can be replaced by something else as its equivalent. On the other hand, whatever is above all price and therefore admits of no equivalent has a dignity. Dignity is intrinsic value. Humans have intrinsic value. The natural environment has an intrinsic value. We don't have prices there. We cannot exchange it. It therefore does not filter into an economistic rationale in the traditional perspective. Yet we all intuitively know that there are things beyond price. I'm saying this kind of advertising you may be familiar with is one of the most popular advertising campaigns there was. And it refers to this notion of dignity, of intrinsic value, of something that's valuable beyond price. If we understand that there are things that are valuable beyond price, our management and organizing changes. If we understand that we need to protect anything that has intrinsic value, then we will organize better. And I'm throwing out these two perspectives on management. The one, the economistic model, with aims at establishing wealth, power, or status, and the alternative model, which focuses on establishing flourishing, well-being, a world in which everyone can thrive. Going back to these two food metaphors, the triangular sandwich as that which represents how we manage when we maximize, and the bagel that allows us to understand that there are minimum standards at the core to protect that which is intrinsically valuable, and then that there is an outer boundary, the planetary boundary, and that management, better management, can be to move humanity up into the safe and just operating zone and to move humanity away from transgressing the planetary boundaries. Now, this could be seen as pie in the sky, but here are just a number of organizations that actually adhere to this model. They're not perfect, but this shows that this humanistic management perspective is practical, is workable, and many times works better. So reality proves possibility. And this course will get into more detail on how you can manage with this alternative perspective, not disregarding the other perspective, but just exploring which is better, more workable.